So, apparently Ryan's favorite book is Catcher in the Rye, so already I'm annoyed. Hey guys, it's Michaela, back again with another video, and yes, your girl got a haircut, no more of that long, terrible mess that was on my head. Now we get this terrible mess instead. So today I am going to be doing a read with me, but it is different than the read with me's I have done in the past because I am, for the first time, entering the wild world of Wattpad. I do not know anything about Wattpad. I heard about Wattpad for the first time when After by Anna Todd was a thing. I have not read that. I've watched the movie, which low-key didn't hate. I have watched a couple booktube reviews of After, and I know that that is something that I am choosing to stay far away from. I've also seen a couple other booktube reviews of different Wattpad novels, but I have never read Wattpad myself. In fact, I just created a Wattpad account the other night specifically for this video. I am a complete noob to this world. I don't know anything. Basically, from what I've gathered, Wattpad is an online writing place for both original fiction and fan fiction. Because if I'm not mistaken, After started out as a Harry Styles fan fiction. Again, don't really know the salient details because I've never read it and I don't plan to. But I have my laptop here, and I just want to start with what happens when you create a Wattpad account. So after I made a login and all that, I was asked to choose 3 sort of genres that I'm interested in reading, and I'm gonna put them on screen somewhere. This is the most hilarious collection of genres and categories because not only do we have paranormal, right? We also have werewolf. What? Why aren't they together? Why were the werewolves specifically called out? So is this implying that werewolves aren't paranormal? Why is fantasy, paranormal, and werewolf all 3 different genres? This whole collection is just hilarious to me. This feels just like an old tag yourself meme. I believe I selected LGBTQ+, teen fiction, and I want to say diverse lit, but I'm honestly not sure. I don't remember. I didn't really spend a lot of time on here except to absolutely lose my mind at werewolf being its own category. I think that's the funniest thing I've ever seen. So once I had selected my 3 categories, I was sort of presented with a bunch of different options and sort of Netflix style subcategories I could scroll through. I spent almost no time picking out the thing I was going to read for this read with me, mostly because A, I don't know what I'm looking for, and B, it was very late at night and I wanted to go to bed. So I ended up choosing Requiem for a Soldier by Ella Lawrence. This story won the 2019 Waddy Award for Romance. I'm assuming that the Waddies are the Goodreads Awards, but just for what's published on Wattpad. And it was also the romance runner-up in EWA 19 Awards. No clue what that means. It says at the top it's a 53-part story, but when I actually look, it looks like there's a prologue and then 45 chapters and an epilogue, and then a couple bonus chapters that I may or may not be reading. But here is the description. After suffering extensive injuries in Afghanistan from an IED that killed his best friend, Ryan decided he was better off dead. He intended to live out the rest of his days alone, away from the media circus surrounding his famous family, away from his heartless ex-fiancée, and away from anyone who knew him before his deployment. When he finds a young woman unconscious and succumbing to hypothermia in the snow outside his remote cabin, his plans to live in complete isolation are thrown into chaos. Though he tries to keep her at arm's length, he finds himself warming to her as she quietly brings life back into his lonely existence. But he's not the only one hiding, and she's keeping a terrible secret that could get them both killed. So, I mean, that's neat. So I am going to get started reading this after I close all of my doors and windows because it is a million degrees outside. And I will check back in when I have some thoughts. Okay, so I am 2 chapters in. Well, the prologue and 1 chapter, the first chapter. The prologue was from Ryan's point of view, and Ryan is the titular soldier of Requiem for a Soldier, and it seems to have been sort of in the immediate aftermath of his IED explosion. It's a little telling. Like, there's this sort of info dump paragraph from a doctor or a field medic of some kind, just listing all of his injuries. He's got third-degree burns over 40% of his body, broken ribs, internal bleeding. He's riddled with shrapnel, and that's just what I've confirmed so far. I've already removed his eye, 2 fingers, and I'll probably need to remove a third. His wounds are becoming infected, and unless we get some heavy antibiotics in him stat, he won't live to see your sorry ass explain why his last hours were spent in agonizing pain. His unit lost 5 good men last week. I don't want to make it 6. So not like the most delicate way to convey information, but like I don't really know how you would do it better. But he's like sort of in and out of consciousness. It's a very short prologue. And then when we skip forward to the next part, we're in Alaska, and I'm guessing that the love interest, or like the lady of the story, that her name is Tasia. It's Tayja, so I'm thinking that's how it's pronounced. And it's not exactly clear what has happened to her. So she's already in Ryan's Alaskan cabin. She has been running from something. It's kind of unclear what's a dream and what's not. But at some point she has had to flee something. Her family is dead. She knows that. And so like Ryan, they haven't introduced themselves yet, but they've like met, but they don't know anything about each other. And he's like so sketchy. He's like wearing a ski mask and gloves, and like I get that it's because half of his body is injured, but like you find this chick in the woods, like maybe don't wear a fucking ski mask. Of course she's going to think she's been kidnapped. Like, but she's also like weirdly chill. So this guy is being super non-communicative. He's wearing a ski mask, he's wearing gloves, and yeah, he feeds her, but she just like decides that he's some poor older man who's had a stroke and like goes back to sleep. And I'm like, you're in a stranger's cabin in the middle of like nowhere, Alaska, and he's wearing a ski. Why are you so chill about this? And we have another sort of like info dumpy thing in this first chapter, but about Tasia instead of Ryan. She says, sadness pours over me at the memory. My mother, my father, my sister. We had such a good time then, a bunch of desert dwellers gawking at snow and trying to avoid crashing into it face first. I'll never go on another ski trip with my family. All of them are gone. The memory of their deaths hits me, and this time I can't force it out of my mind. I grab the pillow next to me and sob into it, trying to muffle the sound. My whole family is gone, and I've been sent to hide in Alaska, far, far away from my home. I'll never tell my mom stories about college again. Dad will never tell me how proud he is of me for moving away to pursue my dreams, even though I was scared. My sister will never tell me about the boys she likes and how he danced every dance with her at the spring formal. My family is gone, and I can never get them back. I cry silently until I feel numb, and the tears don't come anymore. So that's not like the world's best writing. I mean, like, it gets the point across, right? Like, we know she's in college and that she had a mom and a dad and a younger sister, and that they are dead. And she's been sent to hide in Alaska. Like, I don't really know what that means. There's someone named Johnston. Don't know who that is, but that's someone in her life. Possibly the one who sent her there, or possibly the one looking for her. Not super clear. Yeah, I mean, like, this is by far not the worst writing I have ever read. But it's not great. So yeah, that's 2 parts in, only like 40 something more to go. Okay, so I forgot to mention that in the first chapter, before she decides that Ryan, or this guy whose house she's in, is just an old man who has had a stroke, she notices that she is wearing like his clothes and not her clothes. And when she asks like how this came to be, he says that he changed her because her clothes were like wet and freezing, but that he was respectful. Like, I'm not saying that that was the wrong choice to make, because she could have like frozen to death, fine. But now we're in chapter 2 and we're back in Ryan's point of view, so I'm guessing that it's going to switch back and forth POV between Ryan and Tasia. And he says, she's still wearing the clothes I put her in. Her long dark hair is a tangled mess and her pallor looks sickly, but that might just be the greenish hue the aurora is casting on her face. Remembering the look on her face when she asked if I changed her clothing still makes me feel sick inside. I tried to be as respectful as possible, and I wish I could put the memory out of my mind entirely, but it's proving a little more difficult than expected. Despite being extremely ill, dirty, and a little smelly, she was the first female I've seen in years, and she's not hard on the eyes. I try to focus on anything but the image of this girl partially undressed in my arms. I don't even know how old she is. She could be a teenager. She could be in high school. That thought makes me shudder. So I don't love that. Already we've got female, so I'm already not in love with this. And like, to me, I feel like it's not hard to see a dying woman, or like at least a very ill, very like hurt woman, and not have sexual thoughts about her. That seems straightforward to me, but like, what do I know? Okay, so one thing I was definitely worried about before I started reading this was that it was going to be sort of like this glorification or romanticization of the military, which like it very much still can be. I am only on chapter 2, right? So I don't know. But at least we got this little paragraph from Ryan. I joined the US Army thinking I'd make a difference in the world, like I could make it a better place for the safety of America and civilians being oppressed by regimes, like I could single-handedly fix conflicts in the Middle East if only I could shoot all the bad guys, like global politics could be simplified to moral extremes, where the good guys are always right and the bad guys are always bad. I couldn't have been more ignorant. And look what it got me. All of my friends died, including my best friend, and I saw countless civilians die, some at my own hand, some were innocent, some were not. So like, already introducing nuance into the situation. That's neat. I have my own thoughts about the military and the military-industrial complex and the shenanigans that the US gets into abroad. But at least I don't think this is going to be just some like pro-military conservative wank fest. So that's nice. Okay, so I've just finished chapter 4, and I feel like there was a huge shift like tonally between chapters 3 and 4. Like I feel like 1, 2, and 3 all follow each other like pretty logically. They're like very delicate around each other, and very trying to be like very respectful of each other's boundaries, and very sort of shy and touchy, because they don't know each other, and they both like clearly have secrets. But then like in chapter 4, it just sort of starts out of nowhere. She's begging him to stay and being like, I can't leave, they're trying to kill me, which is like a pretty big escalation. And then, you know, she starts kind of interrogating him in this weird way. And at one point, like, she asks if he's hiding out here because he's killed someone. And he asks, like, are you just asking that because I'm ex-military? And so then there's this line, maybe, she says with a non-committal shrug, like she's trying to piss me off. It's working. Like, just like ascribing this motive to her that he has absolutely no reason to know. This chapter just feels like way more all over the place than the last ones did. So Ryan had this fiance named Saf, who presumably dumped him because he has been horribly transfigured by this explosion. At least that is what I have been led to believe so far. And so he like sort of ends this chapter comparing Saf to Tasia. She has told him so far that her name is Annalise, I can't remember. But it's Tasia. So he's comparing them super unnecessarily, and it's like very clear he's already becoming like enamored with her, but it's just like, I don't know, I don't like this. So apparently Ryan's favorite book is Catcher in the Rye, so like already I'm annoyed. Okay, so Ryan finds this chick who is stumbling through the woods, soaking wet and bleeding and delirious, and he takes her in. And he also knows that nearby there was a helicopter crash. Doesn't put those pieces together. Okay. And then he's just now concerned people are going to come looking for you. Police and mountain rescue workers. They can help you. And it's like, why she's been here like 2 days at this point. Why are we just bringing this up now? These people are very dumb. So, chapter 6, and again, we're getting this really unnecessary comparison between Ryan's ex-fiancée Saf and Tasia. Like, we don't know this Saf person, right? We don't even really know why we're not supposed to like her. Like, yes, we do know that they were engaged and are longer engaged, and the implication was that it was because of his like physical injuries, but we don't actually know that for a fact. So it just seems so unnecessary to like be physically comparing these women. Like, here's the description. He calls Tasia Anna because that is the name that she gave him. Something else about her that started bothering me is that she's really quite attractive. In the past few days, she's recovered significantly from her near brush with death. Without the sickly pallor, she's striking. Saf was striking too, but Anna's beauty is entirely different. Saf was all things light and airy. She was tall, blonde, blue-eyed, and willowy, but with curves. Okay. She acted as though life were a joke and the world existed to please her. Anna is much darker, from her olive-toned skin to her dark brown hair and eyes to her serious nature. Sometimes when I ask a question, she refuses to answer, and I see a darkness inside her that threatens to overtake her. Even when Anna is acting carefree and cheerful, there's still a shadow that hangs about her. There's also something infinitely more genuine about Anna, too. I don't think I ever saw Saf when she wasn't looking her best. Anna's beauty is understated but natural. I've also seen her hovering on the verge of death. She seems much more real than Saf ever did. Like, why? Why is that necessary? We as the reader, like, can't even compare them because we don't know Saf. She is not a character in this book. It's just so, like, she's not like other girls. She's different. She's real. Like, fuck off. Also, like I said, the writing isn't terrible, but each chapter switches POV between Ryan and Tasia, and I just by writing can't tell them apart. There's no voice to really separate them. They sound exactly the same, and that's confusing, even though there's only two characters, so it's pretty obvious, like when one character is talking about the other, then that other one can't be the one who's talking. There's still no indication in the writing, in the text, that like they're two different people. So it turns out that Tasia is a protectee in the witness protection program, and that this Johnston person that she keeps talking about is her U.S. Marshal. Ryan has found the helicopter crash that apparently he didn't know about. I thought he knew that the helicopter crash had happened, but apparently he didn't, so I misread that. But he has found it, so now he knows that she's not just like fucking lying. But so now he has just decided that she can stay indefinitely, because he's decided that he's going to protect her from whoever it is trying to kill her. And of course he's rich, because he has to be rich, because he is the protagonist of a romance story. So he tells her to just like order herself clothes and books and whatever, and like he'll pay for it all. And it's just like, why do they always have to be rich? Like, that's so boring. There's this really funny comment on this part that someone posted just 4 days ago. It says, but am I the only one worrying about the whole helicopter shit? Shouldn't he figure something out with them people trying to kill her? He can't handle them on his own after all. Like, I mean, a girl makes a fair point, right? Like, this guy, or whoever has tried to kill Tasia, has killed the two pilots and the U.S. Marshal in this helicopter that then crashed, and this guy doesn't even have all of his fingers. So like, what's he gonna do for her? Okay, so at least Tasia has a personality, which is more than can be said for Ryan. But she has, she's making this list of things to order, and she's like, convinced, like she's figured out, I guess, that he's like very wealthy. So she puts a bunch of joking items on this list, like $1 million and a private island. And I think that's funny. I think, that's cute. And then she starts sort of asking him a bunch of questions about what he likes and, what his favorite things are. And in like having these conversations of just sort of like interrogating him about who he is as a person, adds items for him to the list. And I do think that's really sweet. I do think that's very cute, and I think it shows like she's kind of like this generous and thoughtful person. We still don't really know anything about Ryan other than he is very private, but we don't even know if he was like that before the injury, like before he moved out here. We don't know how, like, the traumatic things that have happened to him have changed him because we don't know who he was before. So right now he's just kind of like this stone, which is not like an invalid way to react to like these traumas, but it makes him seem like he does not have a personality because we don't have anything to compare it to. Chapter 7 has one of my least favorite romance tropes, which is like person A has a nightmare and person B comforts them. I don't know why I hate that trope so much, but like it is, I mean, it's just one of those things that like I don't find it romantic. I don't find it like sweet. I just find it like very cloying or boring, or I don't know, but I don't like it, and I don't like it here. Maybe it's just because like I don't wake up from nightmares. Like when I have them, I'm just in them and then they end and I'm still sleeping. So maybe it's just like very unrealistic for me because like I've never had that like you jolt up out of a nightmare thing, but I don't like it. It's a dumb cliche. Sorry. I have got to start reading the comments on this story more because so also in chapter 7, he has taught her how to shoot a gun, which is fine. But this one person, Are Violet Sky, I don't know how to pronounce it, has left 2 comments on this one chapter. The first is, don't put a gun or rifle on your shoulder, weak area, especially collarbone. Put it beneath it and not on side of a bone on your chest or rib cage. So our friend Ara here, I don't know how to pronounce it, but our friend here is trying to like just making sure we don't injure ourselves, that when we are firing weapons, we are doing so properly and respecting our bodies. But then the next comment is just, what's an ATV? It's like, why do you know how to shoot a gun properly, but you don't know what an ATV is? I love this. This wattpad is full of gems. Okay, so we learn 2 things in chapter 8. The first is that the helicopter crash has been discovered and it has been connected back to Anna/Tasia, whose real name is Anastasia. So like now I guess Tasia is what she actually goes by, but she has told him that her name is Annalise because it's like close to Anastasia. So he calls her Anna, but we are told that it's Tasia. Whatever. But in like the news reporting of this crash, like they've outed her as being in WITSEC, which I just don't think they would. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like when a witness goes missing and their marshal has been found dead, they don't just like hit up the media to be like, hey, we've lost a witness. Like, I don't think that's how that works. And then also we meet the contact that Ryan has to like order the stuff he needs to survive out in Alaska. And it's a guy in LA named Joe. And so when Ryan orders a bunch of feminine things for Anna, you know, Joe starts to rib him for like having a lady friend. And Ryan says, it's not like that. And even if it was, do I bother you about your particular tastes? That silences him, as if he just now conveniently remembered that I'm blackmailing him as much as I am mom, dad, and the rest of my family. So I'm just like, he's a pedophile, right? Like, that's truly the only thing I can think of, is that this Joe guy is a pedophile and Ryan is blackmailing him. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope we get an answer to this. If I'm not wrong, and Ryan is aware that this guy is a pedophile and he's just blackmailing him instead of turning him over to the cops, then fuck Ryan. I hope this guy dies. Okay, so we do have an answer to the whole Anastasia, her name business. Ever since my little sister started talking, everyone's been calling me Tasia. That's what she said when she tried to pronounce Anastasia. It sort of stuck. I'd been spelling it Tasia at first, but soon discovered I could use the more exotic letters Y and J to achieve the same pronunciation with a spelling that looked way cooler on paper. Y'all, did you know that the letters Y and J were exotic? No one had told me. Exotic. what? So I took a little break because I was hungry, and honestly because this book was getting boring. Nothing was happening from chapter to chapter. Basically, like, Tasia and Ryan met in the first chapter, and then the next 7 chapters were just them, like, kind of feeling each other out, which is fine, I guess, but, like, there was no plot or anything. So I took a little break, and then my laptop battery died, so I had to plug it in over here. But again, this whole chapter, chapter 9, is really messy, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Ryan starts by lying to her about the helicopter crash, about his finding the helicopter crash, and says that she can't handle the truth of what happened. It's like, okay, you don't get to make that decision for her, it's her life. And then we find out that Joe, the guy from whom Ryan has been ordering all of his supplies, is his brother. So it's like, so now are you protecting your pedophile brother? Like, what is happening here? And just this, they have this whole conversation where Ryan finally tells her who he is, and it's some reality TV family that he comes from. The details aren't super specific, but the whole conversation just feels fake, and like the beats of the conversation are very off. And in general, I feel like the writing is getting worse. And I'm getting really bored. So I'm gonna try to like power through a couple chapters because I don't want to be reading this anymore. So we have another nightmare scene. It's just so boring. I mean, it's less boring than the first one because Ryan is actually having like war flashbacks and he isn't sure where he is, which again is a trope that I'm not like super fond of, but whatever. But in trying to like sort of comfort him and like bring him back to reality or whatever, Tasia says, "You are a hero to me," I say firmly. "You saved my life, Ryan. If it weren't for you, I would have died that day in the forest. You are my hero." I realize in retrospect that my last comment sounded a little cliche and kind of dorky. I decide to stick with it anyway. It's true. Like, don't call out the fact that the line is dorky and then, or cliche, and then not fix it. Like, I hate that shit. Like, it's fine to have a cliched sentiment, right? Like, sometimes the idea is an idea that's been around before, but don't put it in the most cliched way and then call it out. Like, it's sort of like lampshading, but the writing version. Like, instead of putting in no effort and just saying like, yes, I understand that what just happened was cliche, you could have put in a little bit of effort to write better. Also, there's some real like glorifying and romanticizing of guns and like gun culture that I'm not super fond of, because I don't think I like this. I don't think this was written for me. So I want to sort of make sure that I mention that I'm not trying to like shit on this person who wrote this book and put it on Wattpad. Like, that's an incredibly cool thing to do, regardless of how well written it is or isn't. Like, it's still like a big accomplishment to have, you know, written a novel, and it takes a lot of guts to put it out there. So I want to, you know, make sure I mention that. And I also think that, you know, sometimes our critique can just be, I don't like this thing, but then I think there are also times where the critique can just be, here's an opportunity for improvement. What we have here in this, like, what am I in, chapter 15? Tasia is sort of like reminiscing about her family and telling Ryan what she misses about them. And so she says, "My family used to go on road trips and vacations, play games and watch movies, but my best memories with them are times when we were just sitting around at home, mom and dad telling jokes, making us laugh, or times when my sister and I had sleepovers and stayed up so late that the slightest thing would send us into fits of giggles, or times when my mom and I would just talk for hours, or how my dad was always there for me. Even though I miss them, remembering what I loved about them helps me." Like, so that's a nice sentiment, but it's incredibly vague and non-specific. Like, this paragraph, this opportunity, so like the two of them, Ryan and Tasia, are like trying to get close to each other, or they are getting close to each other, and the best way to do that is to understand each other. And this paragraph could be anybody. Like, there's nothing specific in here. This could be any person who had a mother, a father, and a sister. Like, it's all generic information. It would have been super easy to just put in the details that make it not just this was a family once, but this was Tasia's family. So like, talk about a very specific memory of a sleepover where Tasia and her sister stayed up until 3 a.m. watching, you know, Australian live streamers, like, you know what I'm saying? Just like make it very specific, make it something that like only these two sisters do, and something that she can't ever do with anybody else because it was just this thing with this sister and now that's over. Like, that's where the emotion comes from, not just we had sleepovers. Or like she says how my dad was always there for me. What the fuck does that mean? Like, he picked you up from school? Like, he was always there for you? Like, that's not a thing. Like, talk about specifics. Like, what did she and her dad do together? You know, how was he there for her? What does that mean to her? For some, like, someone who's there for them is more of like in a physical sense, like, you know, they can always be depended on to be there, like, physically. And then for some, it's more like an emotional presence, right? Like, I knew that no matter where my dad was, like, maybe my dad was traveling all the time, but I knew that I could call him at any time and he was going to pick up that phone and we were going to have a conversation. Be specific. Like, this is just too generic to feel real. And because it doesn't feel real, I don't really feel anything for Tasia that she's lost her family, because I'm like, I don't believe that they were real people. Why is Ryan so fucking stupid? So, like, first, he, like, a couple chapters ago, when he is ordering supplies from his brother, he has Joe, the brother, look into this helicopter crash, right? And then, now, on this phone call, a few chapters later, he has Joe Google Anastasia Clarence, which is Tasia's, like, full name, and Joe, like, very obviously connects that this girl that is staying with Ryan is the girl from the plane crash. And Ryan's like, I'm peeved at myself for accidentally leading my brother to this realization. Like, maybe this is why you should have gone to college, Ryan, because what the fuck else was he going to... So, as I said in the past, each chapter switches POV between Ryan and Anastasia. So now in chapter 21, which is, I think, like, roughly the halfway point, maybe a little bit before the halfway point, now for the first time, this chapter is labeled as being an Anna chapter instead of being a Tasia chapter. So I guess she's just, like, fully going by Anna now. She did say in the last chapter that was from her POV, which was, like, 19, I think, that, like, Tasia was dead and she's Anna now. I just find that very confusing. I don't know if that really adds anything to the story, the whole name thing. Like, I get why she lied about her name at first. Like, she was trying to protect herself, and, like, that's totally fine. But going back and forth between Tasia and Anna, I think was just, like, confusing. And, like, I haven't really known what to call her in, like, these check-ins because I don't know what she would want to go by. But I guess she's going by Anna now, so that's where we are. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't take this seriously. So Anna and Ryan are having this conversation where they're both, like, kind of interrogating each other about their traumas, and, like, this story is, like, definitely framing it like the biggest, most traumatic thing that has happened to Ryan is his fiance dumping him for being disfigured. And, like, I'm not saying that's not terrible, and I'm not saying that's not a trauma, but, like, it's definitely equating Anna witnessing her entire family being murdered and then almost being murdered 2 times herself to Ryan being dumped. And I'm sorry, no, they're not the same thing. Now, if this were trying to equate, like, what Anna had gone through and what Ryan had gone through in Afghanistan, that's different because, like, they're not the same situation, but they are definitely comparable. But being fucking dumped is not the same thing as witnessing your family's murder. Didn't think I'd have to say that one out loud, but this is where we are. Guys, this book is so boring. I have now read 24 chapters. There's only 45, so I have 21 chapters left. And nothing has happened. Nothing has happened in this entire story. They've just been in this cabin for 24 chapters. And, like, he just keeps buying her shit. Like, it's literally just, like, them talking and him buying her shit. That's the entire story. I understand that romances tend to not have, like, intricate plots or anything like that, and, like, that's fine. But this has an utter lack of plot. Absolutely 0 things have happened. And I'm just like, I don't understand how there can be no plot. But they have a dog now because that's an advisable purchase. Okay, so I do not know how the author of this book identifies racially or ethnically, and I don't want to make assumptions, but Anna is a Latina character, so, you know, she has basically only ever used Spanish words in reference to family, like talking about her abuelo and her abuela, which is, like, fine, and I feel like fairly standard fare, but the author has chosen to italicize every Spanish word, which, like I said, I think has only been abuelo, abuela, and now tío, which I feel like we are past that. I feel like that's not necessary. I feel like everybody knows what abuelo and abuela mean. I don't think that you need to other these words or like point out that they're not English by italicizing them. I guess if she were saying like entire sentences in Spanish, then like maybe, but even in general, I'm not a fan of italicizing foreign words or non-English words because they're just words. I don't like it. Like, and it's a lot. Like this one paragraph, she's talking about sort of holidays spent with her family, and so like these family words, these like family titles are used a lot in this paragraph, and they're all italicized, and it's just it feels weird in a way I can't really explain. But I just don't think it's necessary. I think we can, as a culture, move past italicizing foreign words. So I took a break again for quite a while and watched some more YouTube because I'm so bored. So I am about to start chapter 31. There are 45 chapters, so I've read 30, not including the prologue, which means I'm 2/3 of the way through. Nothing has happened. They're just like in this house together. Like a ton of time has passed. Because I think it started in March and they're now in November. Yeah, we're getting told lots of information about their individual pasts, but nothing has happened. Like, they haven't even, like, fucking kissed yet. I'm like, this is so boring. They're boring as people. The fact that she's Latina gets brought up, like, once every, like, 4th chapter, if for, like, truly no purpose. It feels like just a reminder, like, hey, this isn't just white people. Like, I don't know. But I feel like if you're going to introduce this concept of one of the characters being in witness protection and, you know, trying to hide from the people who are going to kill her or who want to kill her, like, that's your tension. And then the romance springs up, like, around this idea. But we also need the plot. Like, there needs to be a plot. Right now, I don't know why I'm reading this story. It's so incredibly boring. I want something to spur their relationship. I want something to spur, like, there needs to have to be something to break them apart because they've been trapped in this house together for, like, half a year. And I'm like, if you're not together yet, like, what's taking you so long? Like, I'm just so bored. I have 15 chapters left and I don't want to finish. So chapter 31, or at least what I've read of it so far, is a flashback told in the third person. And it's a flashback, I'm assuming, to the night that Anna's family was murdered. So we already know that her dad is white and her mom is Latina. And here's an exchange between her and her white dad. So her dad says, "How'd you like to get back at your hermanita for the little prank she pulled on you last summer?" And then Tasia says, she's going by Tasia again because it's in a flashback, "The prank me hermanita pulled on me? More like the prank me papi pulled on me." So first of all, like, and I guess I have absolutely no business saying how bilingual people get to talk, right? But I have heard from Spanish-speaking people that very often the way that sort of like natural bilingualism is portrayed, where you're like, you will say like the bulk of a sentence in one language and then just like individual words will be in the other language, is not really accurate, and that's not really how it works. I could be wrong. This is just what I have been told. But then also, why is her white dad calling her sister Hermanita? Like, what? And again, we've got these, like, italicized words. Like, you don't need to italicize Hermanita and mi papi. Like, I feel, again, people know what these words mean. If they are really part of your lexicon, if they're part of how you speak every day, like if this is extremely common language for you, then italicizing it makes it seem foreign or unnatural when it isn't. It doesn't feel right. It feels like performatively bilingual. I don't know. This is the wildest fucking scene. So the sat phone rings because they only have a sat phone, they don't have internet, and Ryan answers it, and it's this like ex-fiance, and like fucking out of nowhere, Anna takes the phone from him. I'm just gonna like read chunks of this whole scene because it is insane. This is told from Anna's point of view. What the hell is your problem? I asked, channeling my righteous indignation into my voice. Who is this? Sparks the woman's voice. I decided to go on the offensive. Someone who doesn't have the patience to put up with your mood swings. Are you really calling your ex after 5 years? Seriously? Don't you have anything better to do? What is wrong with you? The voice that responds is cold and self-important. Stop fooling around with Ryan. He's mine. My mouth drops open. The nerve of this woman. No, he is not yours. You lost the right to say that a long, long time ago. What? And you think he's yours now? You think that just because you're... Yes, as a matter of fact, I do, I say, cutting off whatever she's been saying. Ryan glances up at me through his long hair. What? I look away from Ryan. He is mine. Any chance that you ever had of getting him back is long gone. He is mine now, and I'm not going to tolerate anyone treating him the way you are right now. So erase this number from your phone and never bother him again. I think you're lying, the woman says on the other end of the phone. Oh, really? Why is that? There's no way. He's not into Mexican girls. Finds you all disgusting, really. What follows is a stream of the most racist comments against Latina women I've ever heard in my life. And then so, like, she says all this shit. The ex-fiance says all this shit, trying to convince Anna that Ryan is racist, which, how does she know that she's Mexican? They've never met. How does she know that? We haven't been told that she has any kind of accent. Like, she's from Arizona, and she hasn't said anything in Spanish up to in this whole, like, fight. So how does the ex-fiance know that she's of Mexican descent or is Latina in any way? So she says all this shit, and then Anna says, you really need to work on making your lives more believable. And for your information, we're having hot, wild sex every night and morning. Like, this ex-girlfriend character is so unbelievable. Like, she is just... It's like the author just did everything to make her the worst. She is the worst in every way that a person could be the worst. And it's just like so, it's not believable at all. It's hilarious. I'm like, why aren't we following her? Because she's the only person with like any kind of personality. It feels like the author figured the only way we could like Anna is if we hated the ex, but we still haven't really met her. We don't really know anything about her except what we heard through Ryan's point of view. And like, I don't think he's an unreliable narrator or anything like that, but it's like, we have been given more reasons to hate this random ex-fiance than we have been given to like Anna or to like Ryan. And I'm like, stop focusing on this like random fucking character. Like, I don't give a shit about this person. Ryan doesn't know who Bob Dylan is. You know, maybe it's just that slow burns aren't for me, because I'm at the start of chapter 40 and they haven't even kissed yet. They've barely admitted to themselves that they like each other, much less to each other. And I'm so bored. I'm so bored. Like, nothing has happened. I've been reading this for hours and not a single goddamn thing has happened. The most interesting chapters were the 2 flashbacks. So both Anna and Ryan have had flashbacks in which they're like telling the other about their great tragedy. Those are like interesting chapters. I mean, the writing wasn't great, but they were at least interesting. Like, things were happening. Nothing has fucking happened in this story. Okay, so I just finished chapter 41 and finally a thing has happened. There was a blizzard and Ryan got stuck outside. He twisted the ankle on his like good leg, so he was pretty far from the cabin, so she had to go out in this blizzard and get him and bring him back. And yeah, it was a really good chapter. It was like super interesting, and you know, she got to save his life and like sort of pay him back for him saving her. Still like low stakes when we've already had introduced to the story the idea of a massive crime syndicate and like witness protection. Like, by comparison, a blizzard seems pretty tame, but at this point I'll fucking take it because it's the only event that has happened in the entire book. Well, I finished. I have like never been more mad. The last 4 chapters were Ryan falling into the river and getting trapped in a blizzard, and then Anna going to get him, bringing him back to the cabin, then trekking out into this blizzard to get a doctor, to bring the doctor back. Ryan gets better over the course of like a couple of days, or he had like hypothermia and like something else, I don't remember. And then they say that they love each other and they kiss, and then the fucking crime syndicate just shows up, demands for the money that we still don't know what the whole situation is. Like, when the crime syndicate came to Anna's family's house, they were looking for money, but like it was very unclear like what the situation was. And so they're still looking for this money now. They're not trying to kill her because she was going to testify against them. They just want the money. And so she says, I don't have the money you're looking for, but I am inheriting all of my parents' shit, so you can have that. And so they kidnap her and beat the shit out of Ryan, and that's how it ends. Like, I knew there was a sequel. I didn't know this was going to end on a cliffhanger. So I do want to pause and say that there is an author's note after the final chapter, or after the epilogue. And in this author's note, the author says, several people have asked me about if I'm going to publish this book. Probably not. I've seen the flack that a lot of amateur writers' books have gotten. Book 2 is great, but scary sometimes, and I'm not keen to invite that kind of criticism upon myself or my story. Requiem for a Soldier is my baby, and I'd hate to see it get ripped to shreds. So I don't feel great about this. However, this wasn't just like a random story that I found on Wattpad. I mean, like, technically it is a random story that I found on Wattpad because I only spent about 30 seconds looking before I found this, but it did win the romance award for the Watties, I think. I still don't know what it is, but it basically, what I'm assuming is like sort of the best romance on Wattpad for 2019. And like, that's what I have a problem with. This isn't like horribly written. Like I said, I have read much worse published writing than this, right? But there's absolutely no plot to this story. Nothing happens until there's 45 chapters, a prologue and an epilogue, so we'll just call it 47. And events only happen in, we'll call it generously, 7 of those chapters. It felt more like a collection of drabbles about these 2 characters than it felt like a cohesive narrative, because there's no arc. There's an arc to their relationship, and that is okay. Like, it's certainly not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. But there's no arc to this novel. And again, you know, like, she clearly says she's not going to get this published. And if she were going to, it would require extensive edits. And that's fine and that's valid, right? I mean, as far as first drafts go, not bad. I mean, I have to say, like, this is my first experience with Wattpad, my first foray onto this website, and if this is what they determined was the best romance of 2019, I'm not too keen on reading much more, because I was so bored reading this. Like, nothing happened the entire time. I have been reading this for hours. I mean, I did stop for 2 very long YouTube breaks, but like, still, I was reading this for so long and nothing happened until the very end. Finally, the last 2 chapters, I was like, oh, yes, give me something. And it's a cliffhanger. And you would have to keep reading the sequel. And I have seen the sequel, like, in the recommended on the side. Like, I know that there's more, but like, I don't want to read the sequel. Like, this was just so much empty nothingness for basically 40 of the 47 chapters. I will say that, as far as the dialogue goes, it was like pretty good. There were definitely times like that fight between Anna and the ex-girlfriend Soph, that was not good. But like, generally, like, sort of the banter back and forth between Anna and Ryan, like, I thought it was cute. You know, there were a lot of romance tropes in this story, and I get that romance is a genre that sort of like really revels in its tropes. I am not a seasoned or expert romance genre reader. Like, that's just not where I live. So like, I don't really want to comment too much on that. I just think that the tropes that were used here are tropes that I don't personally like that much, or aren't really, just like, don't really like hit me. Like the extreme slow burn, the sort of, these 2 characters are trapped together and they can't leave. I don't know what that's called, but like, because the two of them aren't like literally trapped together. Either one of them can leave whenever they want. But sort of, they're sort of like figuratively trapped together. You know, the sort of disfigured monster type, which sounds terrible, but that's like kind of what's happening. Sort of like the Beauty and the Beast situation, which is what she even says in her author's note, is that it was sort of started out as more of a Beauty and the Beast type story. I will say, like, a lot of the language about Anna being Latina didn't sit well with me. I mean, maybe Latinx readers would disagree. It just felt off to me in a way that I can't super describe in detail other than what I've already said. I just read the description for Requiem for a Love, which is the sequel. It's not done yet, but it seems to be in part about a cop, and right now is not the climate in which I want to be reading anything about the romanticization of the police. So yeah, not going to be reading that. I'm not interested. I think that Elle Lawrence, the author, at least that's the pen name on Wattpad, but the author of Requiem for a Soldier, I think that they have a very good first draft here. I think they have the start of something very promising. And like, I think that Wattpad seems to me to be like a great place for first drafts. You know, I think it is a good place to sort of get that kind of feedback. I was kind of like reading comments and stuff as I was going. I didn't like read all of them or anything, but I would just sort of like pop down to the comment section every once in a while, and I didn't see a ton of critiques or suggestions other than people like wanting them to get together faster or whatever. And I don't know if that is something that's sort of like site-wide, where it's mostly just people commenting positively with no critiques or no suggestions, but like I think Wattpad could be a great place for authors to put their most raw, like their roughest stuff and get helpful feedback. Like, I would love to sit down with this author, and she might not be interested in improving this draft at all, which is like valid. I have written a ton of shit where I've written like one draft and I'm like, cool, I am never gonna see you again. What is going on with this lighting? But like, I would love to sit down and be like, oh, here are my thoughts. Like, here are the ways that could be, you know, improved, because the bare bones of this, like I said, not bad at all. I know I said a lot of like negative things in the little clips. It's hard to be positive while you're actively reading it because you're experiencing it in the moment, and I just wanted it to be over. But now that it is over, I can look back and like think about the parts of it that I liked, or even the parts of it that like maybe I didn't like, but I know how like one iteration or two iterations later, I definitely would. I personally am counting this as one of my books for the year. I have 100 book goal, like 100 new book goal, so books I've never read before, and I'm absolutely counting this. It was 47 fucking chapters, so I'm counting it. I did not read the bonus chapters, by the way, mostly because I'm very tired and I did not want to. I am considering bonus chapters to be optional reading, and I am opting not to. But because I am counting this towards my 100 book goal, I'm going to rate it, and I'm going to give it 2 stars, because 1 star would be I hated it, and I certainly hated parts of it, but I didn't hate the whole thing. So 2 stars is more like I just didn't like it, and that's where I am. I didn't like it. So I really enjoyed this experiment, even though, as I've said, the actual like process of reading this wasn't the most fun. I do like exploring Wattpad, and I do plan on sort of like fiddling around on here more and like sort of seeing what more there is to read. Right now in my recommendeds on the side, the top one is a story called Bad Boy in a Wheelchair, so I'm just gonna let that one sit there. If this is something you guys would like to see again, if there's something particular on Wattpad you would like me to check out, please let me know. Or even if it's just like a feature of Wattpad, like something unique to this site. Like I said, I spent about a minute and a half on Wattpad before I picked this story, and then I went to bed and did not pick it up again until I started reading this today. So I have not by any means explored the full extent of Wattpad, so I would be, you know, very happy to hear any weird things or interesting things about this site that I could check out. I did see that there are stories that you can pay for. As of right now, that's not something I'm interested in, but it's something to think about for the future. One would hope that the stories that you have to like shell out real money for would be better, but the world doesn't always work that way. Thank you so much for watching. And I also want to say thank you to literally everyone who puts out their writing on the internet in like any capacity, as long as that writing is not like abusive and racist and shit. But like creative writing their stories when they're like making a genuine effort to tell a good story and, you know, put art out into the world, like fucking good on you. I have done it and it is hard, and if you're anything like me, you just read back over what you wrote and deeply hate yourself. But that takes a lot of courage. I hope that the process of writing things to put on the internet, even if you don't get any critiques back, even if you don't get any constructive criticism back, that process helps you improve. I know that's what happened to me. Like, my writing has improved so much since I started posting fan fiction online when I was like, what, 16? So I hope that is true for you, and thank you for putting yourself out there. And like I said, thank you for watching. I've got a bunch of other videos that I would be happy to have you check out. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.